Well, I'm very pleased to say that I held it together a lot better today than I did that day. There was one song from Fanny Hill that I actually knew was autobiographical. It's just that it was the song of the filthy old madam entitled, "I've Had Every Single Man in London." And it never, ever, 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 ever occurred to me that I would ever sing it in public. But this is my club act. Who's gonna stop me? That's a rhetorical question. This is Mrs. Brown's song from Act 2 of Fanny Hill. I've had every man in London, I confess, and there's not a one worth lifting up your dress. Whether short or fat or tall, they are uniformly small in a way that makes you say how less is less. I've had every man in London, if you please, and there's not a one worth opening your knees. Not to say I ever would, not to say I even could, since me joints at several points is apt to freeze. When I was young, I heard it sung that love could conquer all, but Cupid's dart has lost its art and spring has turned to fall. I've had every man in London in me bed, and it wasn't very cosy, as I've said. Every merchant would agree, love is cheap, but it's not free. Get as much as you can get's the standard fee. When you've had every single man in London like me. I was not always as you see me now, with crepey flesh and drooping derriere. Before I lost me teeth and off me hair, before me hourglass began to flare. My figure used to be an hourglass. Now it's an all-day affair. I've had every man in London once or twice, and believe you me, it wasn't very nice. Like this fellow sitting here who surprised me from the rear. I remember you, your hands was cold as ice. I've had every man who's sitting in this row, and you look like you could stand another go. I'm a lady of the night, but I work in broad daylight. You never told me you was married. He's a tiger, ain't he? For you know a woman's work is never through. So when I've had every single man in London, adieu. I've had every Harry, Dick and Tom and Clive, just so long as they was upright and alive. They didn't even have to be upright. I've had gentlemen from France, but they wear those frilly pants, and the Greeks knock at the back door for romance. At Mrs. Brown's house, we take our deliveries in the front. I've had Chinese potentates get in me hair. They always felt as if they weren't there. And besides, you get hungry an hour later. So the English may be best, but they're still like all the rest. They will hop into your bed just like a flea. So don't have every single man in London. For God's sake, ladies, keep your knees together like me.